Hi, good morning. We are meeting today through a recording. So if you have any questions on today's session, you can ask on the 25th. Feel free to have your questions. And the other thing is, before we start the session on 25th, it's better if you go through this presentation. Right. So welcome once again for I think it's the 8th session on financial management. Right. So last week we were on to business valuations, right? That is using cash flow discounting. Well, we didn't get to that yet, but why I picked on this particular chapter is because with discounting fresh in your mind, it's easier for you all to follow this rather than going deep down and then coming back to discounting cash flows. Right. So last week we went to valuations. And what we discussed last week, if you all remember the example I quoted, a three-wheeler trading at 10 million bucks, whereas a brand new BMW going at $1 million. Right? So the value perception that you see is different. The value proposition is different. It's not just the price, it's just the value that you would buy. You would buy into value, not the price. You will not look at the price. Right? So value investing involves buying securities that appear underpriced by some form of fundamental analysis. Okay. Now this is what we do day in, day out. We will buy anything if we feel it is underpriced only. We will not buy anything if we feel it is overpriced. Right now, for example, if a bottle of water is going at 500 bucks, how many of us would buy it? Unless we are really desperate. Right? We will buy only in desperation if it is at 500 milliliters trading at 500 bucks. But if it's trading at 10 bucks, maybe we might not use water from the taps. We might start buying bottled water. Right? It's value that we need. We buy into value. So you buy securities, remember, if they are underpriced, not if they are overpriced. Right? A bottle of water at 500 bucks or a three-wheeler going at 10 million bucks are overpriced. The price is more than what it should be. Whereas a bottle of water at 10 rupees or a BMW at 1 million bucks is underpriced. Right? So out of those assets, we will buy the bottle of water at 10 rupees and the BMW at 1 million. We will not buy overvalued assets. We will buy only if it's underpriced. Right? Valuation is the process of determining the value of an asset, right? Determine the value of a piece of land, or a vehicle, or any asset that you may want to buy or sell. Now, valuation usually is done by experts now. They value land, property, vehicles, machinery, you name it, they will give a value. But those guys are specialized in that skill, right? They're specialized as valuers. But day in, day out, you and I are also valuers, right? We give a value or we attach a value to every asset that we buy or sell. We do it without our knowledge, isn't it? Now, just take yourselves for example, right? You go to a supermarket, you buy maybe a chocolate. Why? The value you get is more than the price you pay. Otherwise, you will never buy it, right? You might buy it and you might give it to the girlfriend or the boyfriend, and the value you get out of him or her is more than what you spend. That's the entire thing about the purchase decision or the sale decision. So you buy even a loaf of bread because you feel the price is less than the value. Then maybe you travel by bus, right? And you travel by bus and you pay the bus fare because you feel the price is more than the price is the price is less than the value that you pay. Okay, so these are two different things. They sound the same, but they're very different. And always you need to compare without you knowing. Subconsciously, you're always comparing the price with the value. It's called the value proposition. Valuation, the process of determining the value of an asset. So remember, not just valuers, not just professional valuers, but each of us are professional valuers in our own sense, in our own right. Yeah. Uh, Also, now you will do an exam, right? For example, maybe the banking exam, and that requires a certain amount of investment or a cost. So the amount that you invest in the exam and the value that you perceive to receive out of it are two different things, right? So you will invest in an exam only if you feel the value you get out of it is much more, isn't it? You will only invest and get yourself registered at the banking institute and do banking exams if you feel the value of having the banking qualification is more than the price that you have to pay. Otherwise, you will not do it, right? So that is what the banking institute is all about. It's about giving your value. It's about creating value for the consumer. Steps in equity valuation process will include understanding the business. You need to understand the business. What business are you in? That's the most fundamental thing. Now, take for example, Coke, a company like Coca-Cola. Right? They're not just in the soft drink business. It's much larger than that. Maybe uh, perhaps they should view themselves as selling not just a soft drink or a fizzy drink, but selling an experience to the consumer. You sell an experience, not a product. Right? You make the consumer happy by selling an experience. So you need to understand your business. What is your business? Are you into education? Or are you selling fast FMCG goods? Are you selling consumer durables? Likewise, forecast the company's performance. Right? Uh, how? What are your projections for the future? Now, the forecast will depend on so many macroeconomic factors as well, uh, along with maybe internal stuff of the company. So you need to focus the company's performance. What is the potential for it achieving certain targets, right? So if it undertakes a project, what is going to be the outcome? Now, for example, if you may have read recently that the highway extensions, I think it is the Ruanpura highway, will be given to local contractors, right? So if a contractor undertakes this project, what is the performance of this contractor going to be, or the company that is undertaking is going to be? Then select a suitable valuation model. So valuation model is what we are going to discuss today. Can be absolute or relative valuation. Right? Then convert the forecast into a valuation. So your forecast has to be converted into a valuation. That means your valuation will depend on the numbers that you get from your forecast. Intrinsic value of an asset refers to the value of an asset estimated by someone who has complete understanding of the characteristic of the asset or the issuing firm. Right? The intrinsic value of an asset is an estimate that is given by someone who has total understanding of the characteristic of the asset. Okay, so that's very important. The person who is assigning the value to the asset should be an expert. He should have total complete understanding of the asset. He should know in and out of the asset. Market price does not always reflect the value. Okay, so price does not reflect the value, which is why, remember the first examples that we quoted, the Mercedes Benz at $1 million is not the actual value, right? It's something different. Or even a three-wheeler at $10 million, still it's the price and the value are totally different. But a loaf of bread at 50 rupees, then the price and the value may be same. By estimating the value, the analyst is assuming that market price is not necessarily the best estimate of intrinsic value. Right? Market price is not necessarily the best estimate of intrinsic value. Right? So intrinsic value. What is this intrinsic value? That is what drives the perception of a person. Market price is not necessarily the best estimate of intrinsic value, right? So price and value. Now, for example, the price of this bottle, 35 rupees. Is this the intrinsic value? Maybe not, right? Well, if it's less, if the price of this bottle is 35, and if I'm very thirsty, right? You are very thirsty, and the price is 35 rupees. You straight away buy it now. But if you're not thirsty, you don't need water, there's plenty of water, you're well hydrated, this price is 35 rupees, you might still not want it. Right? So it depends on, even for a given person, it might vary based on the circumstances, right? So it's about how much of value you're attaching to this. So estimated value and market price. Compare estimated intrinsic value against the price. Intrinsic value. Right. Let's say the intrinsic value, I'm very thirsty, so this bottle is actually worth 500 bucks to me. Right. I'm so thirsty, there is no water around, water cuts everywhere. No source of water from me but this bottle. And I haven't had water, let's say, for 24 hours. This bottle is worth not 35, but it is actually worth 500 bucks to me. Then if I see the price is 35 bucks, what will I do? I will jump, no? I will jump and grab this. Why? Because the intrinsic value is 500, the price is only 35. Right? The price is less than intrinsic value. Then I will buy it. Okay. But now let's say I have bought this. This bottle is mine. I have it with me. Then one friend of mine comes to me and tells me that he is also very, very thirsty. He is willing to buy a bottle of water for 5,000 bucks. Right. 5,000 bucks. Now, to me, this bottle is worth only 35. Right. I have plenty of water. Plenty of supplies. I can get water for 35 bucks. So my friend wants it for 5,000. He has no access to any water. Straight away, I will give it to him. Right. He's giving me 5,000. This asset, the intrinsic value of this asset is less than the price. Then it's good to sell it. Because the price that is on offer is 5,000, the value, asset value is 35, might as well sell it. So intrinsic value is the present value of future cash flows of the security. There you go. Intrinsic value is the present value of future value of future cash flows of the security. Right? So intrinsic value is nothing but the future cash flows that you expect to derive from security, particular asset. Three conclusions. Now, for example, let's say this asset, this bottle, let's say, is priced at 35. Currently, the price is 35. Okay. So let's say I need it in case I want water. Right, 35 bucks. Okay, that's fine. I'll have it. I might use it. I might not use it. I'm indifferent. But even if I don't use it, it's okay. It's fine. I can leave it. Okay. Now, in that case, the price is equal to the value that I attach to it. Right. If I lose 35 bucks, okay, fine. But at least I have bought this. It's worth for me. I'm not compelled to use. Now, in that case, the price is equal to intrinsic value. It's fairly valued. It's called fairly valued. I'm happy with the price. Happy to buy it. But let's say this bottle is offered for 5 rupees. Right? 5 rupees. 5 rupees the bottle. The best water in the country. Yeah. Then I will jump and buy it. Because the price is less than the intrinsic value. Intrinsic value of the bottle is 35, but the price is 5. A price less than intrinsic value, then it's a good buy. It is called undervalued. This bottle is undervalued if it's less than 35 rupees. But if it's trading at, let's say, 200 rupees, 200 rupees a bottle, it's only worth 35 rupees, then I will not buy it. If I have it, I will try and sell it for 200 rupees if anyone is willing to buy it. Then it's called overvalued. Okay, so these are the different pricing levels. An asset can be undervalued, properly valued, or overvalued based on the price and the intrinsic value. Right, so remember, if the price is less than the intrinsic value, it is undervalued. You need to buy such an asset. If the price is equal to intrinsic value, it is properly or fairly valued. And if the price is more than the intrinsic value, it is overvalued. Right, so let's try this example. An analyst using a number of models and a range of inputs estimates the security's value to be $250. The security is trading at 260. The security appears to be, what is your answer? Undervalued, fairly valued, or is it overvalued? Overvalued, undervalued, or fairly valued? Well, it's definitely not fairly valued. No? If it's fairly valued, the price should be equal to intrinsic value, which is not the case. Okay, so let's go through the question once again. An analyst using a number of models and range of inputs estimates a security's value to be 250. Now, which value is this? Is this the price or the intrinsic value? Well, he's trying to figure out the price using a number of models and inputs, and he estimates the price to be 250. So that's the intrinsic value. It's not the price, it's the intrinsic value. Right, intrinsic value is 250. The security is 260. Price is 260. It's only worth 250. Will you buy it? You will not buy. If you have it, you will try and sell it at 260. So it is called what? Overpriced, overvalued. Right? It's overvalued. If a security is overvalued, you need to sell it. It's an overvalued asset. Two valuation models, absolute valuation and relative valuation. Right, first one is absolute valuation. Estimating intrinsic value using an asset's own investment characteristics. Right, so intrinsic value is the present value of future cash flows of the security. Remember, intrinsic value is the present value of all future cash flows of a security. It can be divided into two methods: discounted cash flows, like what we have done earlier, or the dividend discount model, and the asset-based model. Right. The relative valuation models, they estimate intrinsic value of an asset in relation to the value of comparable assets. Right. The intrinsic value of an asset, a particular land. Now, for example, land. How usually valuers look at adjoining lands which may have been sold recently and then arrive at a value of an asset. Right. That's called a relative valuation model. So if the adjoining land is going at $1 million a perch, how much is this land trading at? That's called relative valuation. You estimate intrinsic value of an asset in relation to the value of other comparable assets, right? So it has to be, they have to be comparable assets. Now you can't estimate the value of this pen using the value of this bottle, right? Because these two are not comparable. You can't estimate the value of this pen using the value of a bottle, because these two are not comparable. You should rather use another bottle, something like this. Right now, these two are comparable. One is open, one is a new bottle. So if the new bottle is 35 rupees, how much is this bottle? Right? Nearly identical. Only difference is that been opened and half consumed. Right? So you need to estimate the value of an asset using comparable assets. So if you take two pens, The black pen is 50 rupees. How much is the red pen going to be? Something like that. That's called relative valuation. You are estimating the value of one asset in relation to another. Relative valuation. Intrinsic value of an asset is based on the value of a similar asset. For example, you can use multiplier models like the price to earnings PE ratio or the PB ratio, price to book value or price to earnings ratios. Now, these ratios are used by investors extensively to see which shares are undervalued and which ones are overvalued. Discounted cash flow models, right? So, discounted cash flow, if you all could remember, is called an absolute valuation model, right? Remember, absolute valuation. Part of it is discounted cash flows. One way of doing absolute valuation is through discounted cash flows. Based on the logic that individuals make an investment because they expect a rate of return over the investment period. Individuals make an investment because they expect a rate of return over an investment period. Now, why will you invest in a fixed deposit? Because you expect to receive interest in 1 year. So why do you invest in shares? Because you expect to receive dividends. That is one thing. You also expect capital appreciation. So value of the investment today should be equal to the present value of expected future benefits. Right. The value of your investment today should be equal to the present value of expected future benefits. Meaning, if you invest, say, 100 rupees in a share today, right? You buy a share, particular share at 100 rupees today, you should expect to derive benefit which is at least equal to 100 rupees in the future, right? You might receive dividends in the future, you might get capital appreciation, but you're investing 100 because you expect one is to gain a profit, other one is to retain the value. So the value of investment today should be equal to the present value of expected future benefits, right? So that's why you invest maybe in a fixed deposit. If it's going at 10%, you invest 100 rupees today because in 1 year you will get 100 plus the 10, 110. So investment of 100 today should be equivalent to what you receive in the future. What is the expected future benefit of buying and holding a common share? Why would you buy and hold a common share? One thing is you get dividends. Other one is you get capital appreciation. Dividend discount model. Right. So expected benefits from equities, dividends. Assuming a business will continue for an indefinite period of time, intrinsic value is the present value of future dividends expected to be received from the security. So if you are not planning to sell a particular share, right, you bought it with the intention of holding on, let's say, for an indefinite time period, right, maybe for 20 years, 30 years, long-term investment, right? If that is the case, the capital appreciation is not going to matter to you. What really would matter is the dividends that you receive, right? So expected benefits is dividends. Assuming that the business will continue for an indefinite period of time, the intrinsic value is the present value of future dividends expected to be received from the security. Intrinsic value is the present value of future dividends expected to be received from the security. Right. So this is now, let's say you invested 100 bucks in a share today. Let's say you bought John Keels for 100 rupees at 100 rupees, and in 1 year's time, John Keels pays a dividend of 1 rupee per share, right? So let's draw that in a diagram. Let us assume you invested today 100 rupees in John Keels. 1 year's time, you receive a dividend of 1 rupee. Today your investment is 100, you receive 1 rupee dividend. This dividend is worth, remember, present value. It's 1, if your cost of capital is 10%, the power 1. Worth. So if you invest 100 rupees in John Case today, and in 1 year's time you receive a dividend of 1, the value of this dividend can be obtained through cash flow discounting, the same discounting that we have been doing. And so it's dividend of 1 divided by 1 plus 10 to the power 1. And in essence, this 1 is equal to 90 cents in today's terms. Right. So that's if you invest for one period. Right. And after 1 year, if you're selling, let's say for a price of 100 again, you're selling it for a price of 100 after 1 year. Right. So you bought John Case today at 100, and after 1 year, you're selling it at a price of 1 plus 1 is dividend. You receive dividend of 1. So you buy John Case today at a price of 100. Your investment is 100. Then in 1 year, you receive dividend of 1 plus, let's say you're selling again at 100. So in this case, the present value of what you receive in 1 year is your dividend plus the selling price at the end of 1 year divided by the cost of capital is 10%. It's 1 plus dividend of 1 plus selling price of 100 divided by 1 plus 10%. Which comes to the price of 91.81. This is the present value of the 1 rupee dividend plus the selling price of John Case in 1 year. Now, based on this, the absolute value you get is 91.82. But if you see in the market that John Case is trading at a price of 100, the market price of John Case is 100. This is your estimate. You will receive dividends of 1 plus selling at 100 rupees. So based on your valuation, it has to be 91.82. Now the actual price is 100. It's actually overvalued. This is overvalued. If John Case is overvalued, you need to sell John Case. You can't buy. You should not buy. Overvalued or overpriced, so you need to sell. This is called the one period dividend discount model because you're holding it only for 1 year. If an investor buys and holds a share for 1 year, the intrinsic value is equal to present value of two cash flows, which is the expected dividend plus expected selling price in 1 year. One period dividend discount model. Apple shares are expected to pay dividends at the end of the year of $5. After 1 year, Apple shares will pay dividends of $5. Analyst estimates that the required rate of return to be 10%, right? So your discount rate is 10%. And expected price at the end of the year to be 450. Current price is $400. You have to calculate the value of the share today and determine whether Apple is overvalued, undervalued, or properly valued. So, what is your calculation going to be like? Okay, so this is what it looks like. 1 year down the line, you expect dividends of 5 and to sell it at 450. Today, the price is $400. What should your decision be? Now, remember, this is your forecast, this is your estimate. These are estimates. So, based on these estimates, you need to decide what you should do today, whether you should buy Apple or should you sell Apple. What you do is you calculate, you receive a total of 450 in 1 year. You calculate the intrinsic value. Present value of cash flows, which is 455. Dividends of 5 plus selling price of 450, 455 total divided by 1 plus 10. You get 413.64. That is your intrinsic value. Intrinsic value is $413.64. So your estimate is that the intrinsic value is $413.64. Today it is $400. But the value should actually be $413. So what should you do? It's priced at $400 today. Intrinsic value is $413.64. You will have to, first thing is you need to decide whether it's undervalued or overvalued. Right? So price is less than the value, meaning it is undervalued. If it's undervalued, then your conclusion should be you need to buy. Right? That is when you issue a buy recommendation. You issue a buy recommendation if you feel the intrinsic value is less than, the intrinsic value is more than the price. You issue a buy recommendation. right? That's if you held it on for 1 year and then sold it. Next one is a 2-period dividend discount model, right? So instead of 1 year, what happens if you hold it on for 2 years? If you hold on for 2 years, okay. So if you hold for 2 years, you will receive dividend during the first year. Then the second year also you might receive dividend, and second year you will sell it, right? So first year's dividend you need to discount at the discount rate or the required rate of return, and then the second year's dividend plus the selling price needs to be discounted again at the required rate of return. Okay, so let's do an example on 2-period dividend discount model. Apple shares are expected to pay a dividend at the end of year 1 and year 2 at $5 and $10. Right? So first year you get dividends of 5, and the second year you get a dividend of 10. And let's estimate the required rate of return to be 10%. The required rate of return is going to be 10%. And the expected price at the end of year 1 and year 2 will be 415, 425. Current price is 400. So it's somewhat identical to this scenario. He has to calculate the value of the share today and determine whether Apple is overvalued, undervalued, or properly valued. So let's work it out. Second year dividends, $10. Selling 425. Okay. So the intrinsic value after first year, $413.64. What is the intrinsic value at the end of the second year? If you held this on, you held on to Apple for 2 years, right? You will receive the dividend of first year plus dividend second year, and second year you will be selling it. So this first year selling price is immaterial. You only get the first year dividend. You don't get the selling price. So it will be first year's dividend divided by 1 plus discount rate of 10%. Plus second year you are selling it at 435 divided by 1 plus the discount rate of 10%. Right. It's 4.55 plus you get an intrinsic value of 364.05. The intrinsic value after the first year is 413.64, and intrinsic value at the end of the second year is 364.05. Market value is 400. When is it overvalued? When is it undervalued? Or is it properly valued? It's not properly valued now. Right? It's not properly valued because market price and the intrinsic value are different. Right? So it can't be properly valued. Then what is it? Is it undervalued or overvalued? First year price is 400, intrinsic value 413. Right? So it's undervalued. Then the second year, intrinsic value 364, price 400, meaning it is overvalued. Second year it is overvalued, first year it is undervalued. So if you are holding for 1 year, if your holding period, your investment time period is 1 year, then the best strategy will be to buy Apple or to sell Apple. Will be to sell Apple. Like to sell Apple. Sorry, if your holding period was 1 year, best thing you could do is to buy Apple today, right? Because if you buy today, in 1 year's time, you're reasonably confident that the price might go to 413. Okay, so there will be $13 capital appreciation. But if you had bought it today for 400 and held on for 2 years, right? You have bought an asset for 400, which is actually worth 364. So it's not worth buying it today at $400. Right? So today your strategy should be, if you had Apple, you need to sell it. Right? If your time horizon is 2 years and you had Apple today, you need to sell it because in 2 years it will be worth only $364. Whereas today you can sell it for $400. So your strategy here, it is undervalued. After 1 year it is undervalued. Therefore you need to buy. But after 2 years it will be after 2 years, right? After 1 year, you receive 413.64, right? Because you need to receive the dividends plus the selling price 455 discounted, you get 413.64. Market price 400, therefore it is undervalued. If it's undervalued, you need to buy. But if you held on for 2 years, you receive dividends of 5 plus the selling price 425. Okay, you receive dividends first year 5, second year dividends 10 plus second year selling price of 425. So you receive dividends of 5, which needs to be discounted, plus the 435 that you receive in second year also needs to be discounted. Total intrinsic value comes to 364. First year you get 413, second year 364. First year it is undervalued. Second year the price is 400, discounted value 364, meaning it is overvalued. If it's overvalued, you need to sell. If undervalued, you should buy. Overvalued, you should sell. Right, so that's how it works. Right, so your answer is, if you're holding on for 2 years, the intrinsic value is 364. Today the price is 400. Let me repeat, if you're holding for 2 years, intrinsic value is 364. Today the price is 400. Based on this information, it is overvalued. Therefore, you need to sell. Right. So the next area is Gordon's constant growth model. Now, Gordon's constant growth model assumes that if a company pays dividends, the dividend will keep growing at a given rate, a constant rate. The growth rate of dividend does not change. Right. Now, for example, if John Keats, let's say, had declared a dividend of 10 rupees this year, and if the dividend is expected to grow at 10% rate, next year they expected to declare a dividend of 10 to a growth rate of 10% comes to 11. Right? The year after it will be 12.1. The year after that, again another 10% growth, 13.2. Likewise, every year it keeps growing by 10%. Right? So the growth rate is constant. That's called Gordon's constant growth model. It assumes that dividends increase at a constant rate indefinitely. Dividends will increase at a constant rate indefinitely. Right? Which means the 10% growth rate will remain not today or the next year, but into an indefinite time period. For as long as John Keats is there, they will keep paying dividends and increasing it every year by a constant rate, maybe 10%, 12%, or 15% as they wish. But the growth rate will remain constant. Right? So the intrinsic value will be the present value of increasing dividends. Now this is how they calculate, how Gordon calculates the value of a share. Right? The value of a share is today's dividend into 1 plus growth rate divided by the rate of return minus growth rate of dividends. Right? So today's dividend or D0 into 1 plus G, 1 plus the growth rate, is actually next year's dividend. Right? Today's dividend into 1 plus the dividend growth rate gives you next year's dividend. That's why you get D1 divided by R minus G, because D0 times 1 plus G is equal to D1, next year's dividend. So Gordon's growth model suggests that valuation is a function of dividends, the growth rate in dividends, and a discount rate. It's a combination of these factors. Okay, so let's go through this example. Apple recently paid a dividend of $1.8. An analyst has examined the financial statements and historical dividend policy of Apple and expects that the firm's dividend rate will grow at a constant rate of 3.5% indefinitely. The analyst also estimates that the required rate of return on the investment is 10%. Calculate the current value of Apple share. Right? So when you read this question, it says Apple recently paid a dividend of 1.8. Recently paid a dividend, that means the latest dividend, or D0 is 1.8. An analyst has examined the financial statements and historical dividend policy of Apple and expects that the firm's dividend rate will grow at a constant rate of 3.5% indefinitely. Right, so this latest dividend, or D0 is 1.8, will grow every year at a rate of 3.5%. That means 3.5% for the first year, it will grow at 1.8 into 3.5%. That will be the growth. Recently paid a dividend of 1.8. D0 is 1.8. Historical dividend policy of Apple expects that the firm's dividend rate will grow at a constant rate of 3.5% indefinitely. G is 3.5%, expected to grow indefinitely. Required rate of return is 10%. You asked to calculate the current value of Apple shares, right? So what is the price of Apple? Dividend will grow at a rate of 3.5%. So you can use Gordon's constant growth model. D0 1 plus G divided by R minus G. Right? Use this equation. You need to memorize the equation. So it's 1.8 to 1 plus growth rate 3.5 divided by R is 10% minus G is 3.5. It's 1.8 to 1.035 divided by 6.5%, which is 0.065. 10% minus 3.5, 6.5%. $28.66. So we are 28.66. So this is the price of Apple based on the given information. Current value of Apple will therefore be, the value of Apple is 28.6. Not the price, remember it's the value. The intrinsic value of Apple is 28.6, right? So this is called absolute valuation. You're not comparing it with anything but absolute terms. Then we move on to relative valuation models based on multiples. They're called multiplier models. Price multiples. So this is what most investors typically do. Now, if you are analyzing an investment, if you are an investor in the share market, one of the first things that most investors, stock investors, will do is when they look at a company, they will see what is the price to book value of a company. Let's say you're investing in a bank, for example. Right? So what is the bank price, the price of a bank, of that bank, particular counter divided by uh, the book value of the bank, right? Now, take for example, let's say Sampath Bank, right? Sampath Bank price, which says 120, book value might be 250. And you know what book value is? Book value is total assets of a company minus the liability, short-term liabilities, right? So assets minus liabilities. All the assets minus divided by per share divided by number of shares. That gives you book value per share. And so if you take maybe Sampath Bank, price to book value, price is 120, maybe book value is 270. That's book value of about 0.4. Or whatever. Price to book value. The price of a share divided by the book value of a share. Now, this is one of the most important ratios that an investor would look at. Price to book value. The reason is why an investor might look at this ratio is now price of a share is there in the market now. The book value is based on the strength of the balance sheet of this asset. Right? So you look at price and also the book value. Okay, now if Sampath Bank, for example, is worth, the price of Sampath Bank is 120 and the book value is 270, right? Now let's say some other bank, any bank, not the Sampath, but any bank. Let's say the price is 120, book value is 270. So if this bank by any chance goes into bankruptcy, if it goes into bankruptcy, what is left is all the assets of the bank minus whatever the liabilities, right? So assets minus the liabilities. In other words, the equity. The total amount of equity is what is given by book value. So if that is what is left in the bank, if it goes bankrupt, so that amount of equity will be left, right? It can be divided amongst the investors, the shareholders. So 270 is the worst case or the base case for the bank. It has to be at least 270 bucks. But the price is 120. Market price is 120 for a bank or a share which should have a value of at least 270. Because all the assets, net of liabilities is 270. In the worst case where the bank goes bankrupt, it will have a net asset base of 270. Okay, so you can buy an asset today 120, but it has book value of 270, which is very cheap. Okay, that's how it works. Most investors will look at the PB ratio, price to book. Multiplier models. A price multiple refers to a ratio that compares the share price with some sort of monetary value to allow evaluation of the relative worth of an asset. It values a stock based on the average price multiple of stocks of similar companies. Right? So now price to book value usually is an industry standard. For the banking sector, it is a particular value. Maybe all the banks are trading these days at a book value of price to book value of 0.5. Right? But if there is a bank that is unusually high, maybe at 0.7, price to book value is 0.7, whereas the rest of the industry 0.5. That means the price is very high in that bank. Right? It's overvalued. But if the price, the book is 0.2, then it may be undervalued. PE multiple model, right? The price earnings ratio, price per share divided by earnings per share. Earnings per share is the net profit divided by the number of shares. It gives you earnings per share. So the question is, MK Technologies share is selling for $50. They were bought for $40. Earnings for the last 12 months were $2 a share. You asked to calculate PE multiple. So the share price is the PE ratio. Divided by price of a share divided by earnings per share. MK Technology shares are selling for $50, right? So the market price is 50. They were bought for $40, which is immaterial. Earnings for the last 12 months, $2 per share. Earnings per share, $2. PE ratio is 25. This is how it works. Price of the share is 50, earnings per share 2. PE multiple is 25. Okay, earnings per share is the net profit divided by the number of shares. That's how you get earnings per share. Now, when it comes to earnings per share, there are two types of earnings per share you can use. It's either the trailing or the leading. Right? Trailing means the last 12 months. Last 12 months, what happened? Leading means the forecast for the next 12 months. Right? There are two PE ratios. One is called the trailing PE ratio, other one is called the leading PE ratio. Trailing PE means the fundamental is the same. It's always the price of a share divided by earnings per share. But when it comes to earnings per share, it can either be the trailing or the leading. Trailing means the last 12 months. Right? You take the last 12 months performance. What is your earnings per share? The last 12 months. Leading means what is your forecast for the next 12 months. So it's always the price divided by earnings per share. Right? It can either be the last 12 months, in that case it's called trailing, or it can be the next 12 months, which is the forecast. Right, so let's try this example. Read it and try the example. It says Byron Investments reported a 32 million earnings during fiscal year 2007. They have reported 32 million in earnings. An analyst forecasts an EPS for the next 12 months of 1. Byron has 40 million shares outstanding at a market price of 18 euros per share. You have to calculate Byron's trailing and leading PE ratios. Trailing and leading PE ratios. Trailing means the last 12 months, leading means the next 12 months of the forecast for the next 12. Let's calculate. Earnings per share for the next 12 months is 1 euro. 40 million shares outstanding. So, trailing. $32 million divided by trading EPS is the last 12 months earnings divided by the number of shares. Earnings 32 million. There's 40 million shares outstanding. 0.8. Trailing PE, trailing earnings per share is 0.8. Leading earnings per share is 1. Price is 18. You asked to calculate Brydon's trailing and leading PE ratios. Trailing PE. It's the price divided by trailing earnings per share. Price 18. Divided by the trailing earnings per share is 0.8. It's 22.5. That is the trailing PE ratio. Then the leading PE is the price divided by leading earnings per share. Price 18. Divided by the leading PE is 1. Is 18. Trailing PE 22.5, leading PE is 18. Now in the industry, which one is correct? Which one do you use? Do you use trailing or leading? It doesn't matter. You can use either, but if you are using trailing, then across the industry, every company you have to look only at trailing. And if you're using leading, all the companies you need to look at the forecast. Right. So that is how it works. PE multiple models. Estimating intrinsic value of a share in relation to comparable PE ratios. PE ratio is equal to the price of a share divided by earnings. Yeah. Right. So So if you do cross multiplication, you will get PE ratio into earnings per share to be equal to the price. Right? In other words, price equal to PE ratio into earnings per share. Right. So this is, if you say this is the intrinsic value, will be the PE ratio. It may be industry PE. The earnings per share. And that's what you get here. Right. So let's try this example. MK Technologies shares are selling for $50. Earnings for the last 12 months were $2 per share. The average trading PE ratio for the firm in MK's industry is 32 times. You asked to calculate the intrinsic value of a share and decide whether the share is undervalued, overvalued, or fairly valued. Right, very straightforward question. Is MK Technology shares are selling for $50. So price of a share is $50, market price. Earnings for the last 12 months were $2 per share. Last 12 months earnings were $2 per share. Trailing PE for the firms in NPS industries 32. P ratio is 32. Calculate the intrinsic value of a share. Earnings for the last 12 months $2 per share. So trailing earnings per share was 2. PE is 32. Asked to calculate the intrinsic value of the share. So the intrinsic value is the PE ratio 32 times trailing PE is 2. $64. That is the intrinsic value. $64 is the intrinsic value. Right. So market price $50, intrinsic value is 64. What will you do if the price is 64 for an asset which is actually worth 64? Price is 50 for an asset which is actually worth 64. You will have to jump and buy it. No? You need to purchase MK Technologies. Why? You can buy it at 50, but it's actually worth 64. So it is undervalued. Yeah, undervalued. MK Technologies in this case is undervalued. All right. So the intrinsic value is the PE ratio into the price, $64. Now the market price is 50, and MK is trading at 6. Sorry, market price is 50, but the intrinsic value $64. Right. So it's a good buy because this is undervalued. It is undervalued, which means you need to buy. MK Technologies is undervalued because the price is less than the market value, the intrinsic value, so you can buy it. It is a good to buy share. Let's try this example. Very interesting one. Now, if you understood this, if you can crack this question, it means you have understood. Consumer, it says, based on the PE multiple model, consumer products has a trailing PE of 27.52. While the median peer group PE is 33.25. Assuming that there are no differences in the fundamentals among peer firms and consumer products, the firm is correctly valued, undervalued, overvalued. What do you all think? It has a trailing PE of 27.52. So the PE ratio is 27.5. Median peer group 33.25. That means the industry is 33.25. No differences in fundamentals. What do you think is correct? Is it correctly valued, overvalued, or undervalued? Well, I can eliminate one answer so that you get a 50-50 chance of success, right? I'll take the most difficult one out. I'll take A out. Okay, so you have a 50% chance of success. A is wrong. It's definitely not correctly valued. What will be your answer B? You have 50% chance of success. Right? Okay, close your eyes and pick one answer. Is it overvalued or undervalued? Trailing PE 27.5, right? So it has a trailing PE of 27.5. Median peer group 33.25. No differences in fundamentals among peer firms. Right. So consumer products has a PE of 27.52. Trailing PE, very important. Trailing PE means you're using the price and the earnings per share for the last 12 months, isn't it? Okay, so I have given you some clues. I'll give you one more minute to think it over. Right, so consumer products P ratio is 27.5. and the industry is 33.25. It says no differences in fundamentals. That means consumer products is as good as the industry. Now you're looking at trailing PE. So it's the price divided by earnings per share of last 12 months. Right. So earnings per share of the last 12 months. The last 12 months is already gone, so it will not change. Earnings per share for the last 12 months will not change. The only thing that can change is constant, this is fixed, will not change. The only thing that can change is the price. It can change. Right? And the current PE of 27.5 should increase to 33.25. From 27.5, it has to go to 33.25. That means the PE should increase, or the price should increase. Why? Because earnings per share of the last 12 months will not change, right? Earnings per share means the total earnings or the net profit divided by the number of shares. Now, net profit over the last 12 months will not change. Already been booked. And the number of shares for the last 12 months will also not change. So earnings per share for the last 12 months is going to be constant. No change. Only thing that will change is the price. And the price, in this case, if the PE ratio is to go up, the price should also go up. The price should go up from this level. That means currently it is undervalued. Consumer products is currently undervalued. So the PE ratio is currently less than the market. It is undervalued. Therefore, you need to buy consumer products because the price is likely to increase. And that is how it works. Right. So far we have done absolute valuation models and relative valuation models. Absolute valuation is the first one that we did, cash flow discounting. You discount the dividends that you receive along with the selling price. Right. Then the other method is under absolute valuation is asset-based model. Right. Now PE ratio, PB ratio are all relative valuation models. Asset-based models, they use estimates of the market value of assets and liabilities in arriving at the value of a share. Right, estimate of market value. You have to use the market value of an asset, not just the book value, but the market value of an asset or a liability. If it's based on recorded at book value, you need to convert it into market value. Relevant for the now asset-based models are relevant for companies that do not have a high proportion of intangible assets. Right, they are relevant for companies that do not have high proportion of intangible assets. Very important point. If you have intangible assets, right, like your patents, your trademarks, goodwill and all that, then this model might not work because it's difficult to assign a value to those such assets. Right? So you need to have tangible assets for this to work. Right, asset-based models, let's go through this example. iPhone Limited has 1,000 shares outstanding. So 1,000 shares are left there in the market. Market values of inventory and accounts receivable are reported. You have been given iPhone Limited, the balance sheet as at 31st December 2012. You have assets totaling 120,000 and liabilities totaling 120,000, right? In the assets, you have cash 5,000, accounts receivable 15,000, inventory of 30,000 and net fixed assets of 70,000. So cash, the value is not going to change now. Accounts receivable is there, inventory is there, net fixed assets, okay. Liabilities here, accounts payable, term loans and equity, right? The question says market value of inventory and accounts receivable are as reported. Inventory and accounts receivable are as reported. The market value of net fixed assets is 120% of reported book value. The reported book value of liabilities reflect their market value. Using the asset-based valuation approach, estimate value per share from adjusted book values. Right. So how are you going to tackle this? Right. You have assets, cash, account receivable, inventories, you have your book value, and let's record them under market value. 5,000, 15,000, 30,000 and 70,000. And your liabilities. Yeah, accounts payable, term loans, and equity. Right, so this is how it looks like. Like you have assets recorded at book value and liabilities also at book value. Now, what you need to do is the exercise is to convert them into market value because it's a market value based approach. It says 1,000 shares outstanding, market value of inventories, accounts receivable are as reported. Inventories and accounts receivable are as reported, these are fine. Market value of net fixed assets is net fixed assets 120% of reported book value. The book value is 70,000. 120% of this is you need to add another 14,000, which comes to 84,000. These are correct in order. Cash 5,000. So the only item that will change is net fixed assets. Will increase by 20%. Accounts payable 20,000. The reported book value of liabilities reflect their market values, right? So liabilities, which are accounts receivable and term loans, reflect market values. Accounts receivable remains at 20,000 and term loans remains at 25,000. The only thing that can change, in other words, is equity. So the adjustment comes against equity. It has to increase by 14,000. Right? From 75,000, it has to go up to 89,000. Right. So the question is using the asset-based valuation approach. Asset-based valuation approach. Okay. That means you need to adjust all your assets and liabilities to book value. Sorry, to market value. Right. From book value, you need to convert them to market value, which you have done. Estimate value per share from adjusted book values. So book values have been adjusted, and the book value per share. Value per share is equity divided by the number of shares. Equity is 89,000. Number of shares 1,000. Meaning the value of a share is 89. Right, so this is called the market value based approach. You adjust everything to reflect their market values. So I hope that was clear. Now, valuing equity. Next area is on valuing equity. Right, so we discussed so many models: absolute valuation, relative valuation. Within absolute, we discussed discounted cash flow methods and asset-based valuations. Right. So now these are ways of valuing equity: absolute and relative valuation. Now, on top of that, what affects the value of an asset? What is going to affect the value of an asset? Right. Now, let's say you have a piece of land in well, let's say maybe in Afghanistan. You have a plantation, huge plantation in Afghanistan, but it is war-torn. War-torn region, you have a huge plantation. So the value of that asset is probably lower because of the war. Now, if all of a sudden Afghanistan the war is over. There is no Taliban and all that. It's peace becomes very peaceful, right? Then what happens? Then the value of that asset will increase. Why? There is stability in the country, political stability, right? Then what if you have invested in gold? You had invested in gold about, let's say, 10, 15 years back. You bought gold. Now, today, the value of that asset would have increased because there is so much of uncertainty in the world. Everyone is buying gold. The value of gold has gone up, right? So there is uncertainty in the world. Uh, then GDP factors, GDP growth rate, industry growth. Now, if you had, for example, invested in Bitcoin about 10 years ago, Bitcoin at that time was just $2 a Bitcoin, right? You can spend $2 and buy one Bitcoin. But today it is about $8,000 a Bitcoin. It went up to $19,000 a Bitcoin. So the $2 would have gone up to $90,000 highest within 10 years. Right? So if you had invested in Bitcoin that time, you would have made a killing. Okay, so technology also changes. But what if you had bought Nokia shares or uh, Kodak shares? Nokia or Kodak about 20 years ago, if you had bought those shares, today you would have lost most of your value, your wealth, because those companies are no more, right? I mean, well, they are almost gone. Look at what happened to Nokia after the mobile phone disruptions in mobile phone technology, and Kodak is nowhere. That's because technology can disrupt. So likewise, there are so many factors, from economic factors like the GDP, inflation, unemployment, exchange rate, uh, to economic factor, from economic factors to social factors, something like social distancing, COVID-19, right? Then, this also has a huge impact on businesses. You would have seen the impact on the stock market. Right? Then country-specific factors, right? Perhaps political stability in a country, economic stability. So all these things will have an impact on the value of a share. Right? Also, international economic conditions. Now, what is going on in the US? What is the Federal Reserve doing to interest rates? They have been cutting interest rates. Now, interest rates in the US are at an all-time low. They have been printing money. So lots of money is being printed and coming to the market. Fiscal policy of a country. What are the tax laws in the country that prevails? Monetary policy. What is central bank doing with interest rates? Economic conditions. Right? How is the GDP growing? Sri Lanka's GDP is expected to come down to about 1.5% growth, slowing down. Exchange rate is holding and strengthening a little bit. The rupee is strengthening. It went about 192, 195 levels, but gradually it has picked up steam, gathering momentum, strengthening, because imports have been curtailed. We have recorded a trade surplus after some time. Then the country's economic conditions, right? Industry conditions. What is going on in the industry now? These days, the hotel sector is taking a real beating. Tourism sector, hotel sector, right? Getting thrashed because of what is going on. Firm specific conditions, right? What is happening in a particular company that you're analyzing now? Maybe a company like Burfinance, right? Being wound up. Liquidator has been appointed. So it's not doing well. So those are firm specific conditions. Now the stock market conditions. Are there manipulations happening in the stock market? Is the stock market performing well? What is investor sentiment? How many retailers are in the market? Where's the market heading? Then the firm systematic risk, right? That's the firm specific factors. Now, for example, if you take a company like John Keells, they are very stable, and the beta is very low, less than 1. The market risk premiums, now these days risk premiums have gone up. They say the banking sector is taking on more risk. NPS, I think, around 5.6%, and expected to increase. So firm specific factors, market risk premiums are also increasing. The risk-free rate, right? Treasury bills and bond rates have been coming down. Risk premium of a firm, the required rate of return by an investor, value of the firm's stock, expected cash flows to be generated by various projects. Now, like for example, take John Hughes. They have embarked on an adventurous project, a very exciting project called Cinnamon Life. So how well is that going to perform? And what is the implication of the cash inflows that they get on the company, the entire company, right? So all these factors will combine to affect the value of a particular share. So share value is not driven by 1 or 2 factors, but everything that happens around you in the world, or sometimes beyond the world, will also have an impact on the share price. Okay, the value, it will have an impact on the perception of value of a firm, of an industry, of a company. And so there are not just 1 or 2 factors, but so many factors. It's actually open. These are not watertight compartments, right? Economic factors work in so many ways. There can be so many combinations and permutations that can affect the value of a stock, right? So with that, we conclude valuation. I hope it was clear, and you'll be seeing this through a recording. Now, if you have any questions pertaining to today's lesson, please feel free to ask them on that when we meet on the 25th for a live session, right? So thank you very much. Stay safe. All the best for the week. I will see you on the 25th through a live session. All right. Thank you.